They say the desert keeps its secrets better than any man. Beneath miles of sand, it hides not only the tombs of kings, but the sins of gods. My name is Dr. Elias Crow, archaeologist, historian, and until a few years ago, a man of reason. But there's a place deep in the southern dunes of Egypt that stripped all reason from me. It began with a letter, a thin, yellowed envelope waiting on my desk one morning at Oxford. No return address, no name, just a single line written in ancient hieratic script, the language of priests. The sands are shifting. He is calling again. I thought it was a prank. My students loved to test me with old forgeries, but something about the ink, faded yet strangely alive, made me stop. It pulsed faintly under light, as if written in something other than ink. Within a week, I was on a flight to Cairo. They called it madness. I called it research, but deep down, I knew I was answering a call older than history itself. The desert air hit me like a wall, dry, sharp, and endless. Every horizon was a mirror of the last, dunes swallowing dunes until the sky bled into gold. We traveled south for days. Myself, a young Egyptian guide named Bill, and a mule carrying our gear. Our destination, the lost necropolis of Emin-Ra, a priest whose name was stricken from every royal record around 1300 BCE. No one knew why, but the locals said his tomb still breathed at night. On the third day, the compass stopped working. The needle spun, trembling like it was afraid to choose a direction. That's when the Beal told me the story, the one his grandfather used to whisper. He said there's a place the Bedouins call the mouth of the earth, a valley of sand where compasses fail and shadows move without sun. They say it's where the gods buried their mistakes. That night, I couldn't sleep. Outside my tent, the wind had stopped completely. And in that silence, I heard something impossible. A voice, faint, coming from under the sand. It wasn't in English. It wasn't even in Arabic. But somehow, I understood. It said, "Return." At dawn, we found tracks around the camp, not human. Long, uneven impressions in the sand circling the tents like something had been watching. Nabil refused to go any further. He said the land beyond belonged to those who walk between dust and memory. I went alone. By midday, I reached a ridge that overlooked a narrow canyon. From above, it looked like an open mouth, jagged and dark, swallowing the sun's light. And there, half buried in the sand, I saw the stone. It was no ordinary stone. A black basalt slab, smooth as glass, covered in symbols older than hieroglyphs. The air around it shimmered with heat, though the wind was cool. When I brushed the sand away, I found something carved at the bottom. A single, unblinking eye. The eye of Emin-Ra. Suddenly, the wind picked up. Sand lashed my face, the sky dimmed, and from somewhere within the canyon, I heard it. The same voice as before, stronger now, layered like a chorus. It said, You have seen the stone. Now you are seen. I don't remember falling, but I woke up half buried hours later. The sun was gone, and the stone was gone too. That night, I sat by the campfire, my journal open. Every time I tried to write, the ink bled into symbols I didn't recognize. Curves and lines that seemed to move when I blinked. Nabil didn't speak, he just stared into the dark. Finally, he said something I'll never forget. Once the desert speaks to you, it never stops. Before dawn, I dreamt of a temple, black stone columns rising from shifting sand. At the center stood a figure in gold and shadow, its face hidden by wrappings. It raised one hand and whispered something in a language I'd never heard, but my heart understood. When I woke, I was holding something, a handful of sand, cold as ice. Back in Cairo, I brought my notes to Professor Rafiq al-Masri, an expert in forgotten cults. When he saw the sketches of the stone, his expression changed. He told me the symbols weren't Egyptian at all. They belonged to the pre-dynastic cult of the Hollow Sun, a sect believed to worship the absence of light. He said they were erased by Pharaoh Seti I for performing forbidden resurrection rites. Their high priest, Emin-Ra. Rafiq told me that the last inscription ever found about Emin-Ra was carved on the wall of a collapsed tomb in Abydos. It read, "He who calls from beneath the sand will rise when the unblinking eye is seen again." He looked at me and said, "Dr. Crow, if that stone has returned, then something has already begun." That night, I checked my reflection in the hotel mirror. For a moment, just a flicker, I saw something behind me. A shape, tall, thin, with a faint glint of gold wrapping around its wrists. But when I turned, there was nothing there. I didn't sleep. The next day, I tried to leave Cairo. Every taxi I hailed broke down. Every road to the airport was closed for maintenance. It was as if the city itself wouldn't let me go. Back in my hotel room, sand began to appear again, in the sink, on the floor, even inside my suitcase. The same faint scent of myrrh that had filled the canyon returned. And then I heard it, not in the distance this time, but inside the room. That voice, "You have seen the stone, now you are marked." The lights flickered, the sound of sand against the windows grew like a storm. I fell to my knees, clutching the amulet I'd found among the Bill's things. A small bronze scarab, its wings etched with the eye of Emin-Ra. And in that instant, everything stopped. The room was silent, the sand settled, and written on the mirror, in lines of dust, were the same words that had started it all. He is calling again. The next morning, I found a note under my door. It had no handwriting, just a single fingerprint in red clay. Attached to it was a small scrap of parchment, part of a map, torn, showing the Valley of the Kings. At the bottom was a mark I recognized immediately. The eye. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just an archaeological mystery. It was an awakening. Something buried beneath centuries of silence was stirring again. And somehow, for reasons I still can't explain, it wanted me to find it. The desert doesn't forget. It waits. And when it calls, you either listen or you disappear. There's a moment when curiosity turns into something darker, when knowledge stops being a search for truth and becomes an invitation. After Cairo, I thought I'd seen enough, but the voice in the sand, it wouldn't let me rest. For weeks, it echoed in my dreams, whispering through dunes that bled into shadow, and every time I woke, there was sand on my pillow. My notes on the Eye of Amun-Ra had grown into a full investigation. No record of his burial existed, only warnings scratched onto tomb walls by other priests. One found in Saqqara said, "He who dares to open the gate of Amun-Ra will feed the hunger between worlds." It wasn't superstition, it was a threat. Still, I couldn't stop. Rafiq, the professor who'd warned me in Cairo, finally agreed to help on one condition, that whatever we found, we would seal it again. Deep within the archives of the Egyptian Museum, there was a restricted chamber, a vault of unclassified relics sealed under government order. Rafiq had access. That's where we found it, a fragment of obsidian carved with the same unblinking eye. He said it was recovered from an illegal dig in 1923. The excavation team vanished within a week, all except one, a German archaeologist named Adler, who left a single note before disappearing. "The priest still breathes. His tomb is not silent." That phrase haunted me, so we traced Adler's route across the desert, following the coordinates scrawled on the back of his map. They led to a site no one dared mark officially, a valley near the Nubian border known as Wadi al-Maut, the Valley of Death. When we arrived, the landscape looked wrong, rocks tilted at impossible angles as if the earth had shifted in its sleep. The air shimmered even under the moon. Our guide refused to enter. He left his camel and said, "This is not a place for men of breath." Then he vanished into the dunes. We were alone. At the base of a limestone cliff, we found a sealed doorway, half buried, covered with carved figures, but unlike other tombs, the carvings didn't honor gods. They showed something else. Figures kneeling before a black sun, eyes cut from their faces, hands reaching upward as if to stop the sky itself from falling. Rafiq said, almost in a whisper, "This isn't a tomb, it's a prison." We cleared the entrance, rushing centuries of dust away. At the center was a line of hieroglyphics carved in deep precision. I translated them aloud. "To silence the hunger of the dead, walk backwards into the darkness and never speak his name." Before I could stop him, Rafiq laughed softly. He said, "Old superstitions," and with that, he broke the seal. The smell hit us first, dry but metallic, like old blood. Inside was a narrow passage, walls etched with symbols that seemed to shimmer in our flashlight beams. I ran my hand across them. The stone was warm. After 20 meters, the corridor opened into a chamber. There were no sarcophagi, no treasures, only a single altar made of black granite, and lying upon it, wrapped in decayed linen, was a body. The linen was not Egyptian. It was woven with hair, human, black, and coarse. Rafiq whispered, "It can't be." At the foot of the altar, an inscription glowed faintly as our lights passed over it. It read, "He who fed the hollow sun will feed it again." Then something shifted. A single grain of sand fell from the ceiling, landing on the body's chest. The air grew colder. The flame of our torch bent, not flickered,
bent as if pulled toward the mummy. And then it exhaled. We stumbled backward. The wrappings rippled. A dry whisper filled the chamber, words older than breath, vibrating through the stone. Rafik dropped his light. In its flicker, I saw his eyes go wide, reflecting something behind me. I turned, and there, standing in the shadows, was a figure. Tall, thin, draped in tattered gold, its face hidden behind a cracked mask, the face of a priest. It raised its hand, pointing directly at me, and in my mind, not my ears, I heard, "You open the gate. You bear the mark." Rafik screamed. The torches went out. For what felt like minutes, we were trapped in pure darkness, the air heavy with whispers circling us like flies. When the lights came back, the body on the altar was gone. Only the wrappings remained, coiled into the shape of a serpent. We ran. Neither one of us looked back. Outside, the night was colder than before, the moon hidden by storm clouds. Rafik wouldn't speak the entire way back to camp. At dawn, I found him sitting near the fire, eyes vacant. He was whispering the same word over and over, "Ra, Ra, Ra." When I touched his shoulder, he screamed, his pupils gone, replaced by tiny circles of sand. We buried him in silence, and as I stood there, I realized something horrifying. On my arm, where the sand had brushed me in the chamber, a mark had appeared, a faint symbol, the same unblinking eye. That night, I returned to Cairo alone. I tried to tell the authorities, but no one believed me. The site was never found again. They said I was delirious from dehydration. But every night since, I hear him, the priest. He doesn't speak with words anymore, only through dreams. I see him standing in a field of black sand waiting. Sometimes he raises his hand, and I feel the air leave my lungs. I've tried to burn my notes. They reappear. I threw the scarab amulet into the Nile. It returned the next morning on my desk, still wet. And last week, I received another letter. Same paper, same script, no sender. It said, "The sun is hollow, the priest walks again." And now I understand what Rafik meant when he said the desert never forgets. It doesn't keep the dead buried. It waits for them to remember. And I fear they already have. Emin-Ra was never meant to rest. He was meant to rise. And as the sands shift once more, I realize the curse was not on his tomb. It was on anyone who dared to open it.